Hello, everyone. I'm KJM News Director Sue Bergheim, and joining me today in the KJM studios is District 8 Senate candidate Charlie Johnson. Charlie, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Now, we'll start off, Charlie, with having you talk a little bit about yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about why you're running for the Senate seat for District 8.
Okay. My name is Charlie Johnson. I farm down in Orland Township, south of Madison. I've been a lifelong resident of Lake County. Grew up here, went to Madison High School, graduated, attended Dakota State College, graduated from there with a business administration degree, and have been farming pretty much ever since the early 1980s. I believe in agriculture and I enjoy farming. My wife and I have 5 children, and we attend St. Thomas Catholic Church. Reason I'm running, I guess, is education more than anything. I really feel strongly that we need to address the lack of proper funding for education, the lack of proper emphasis on education for our children, and the fact that we don't fund it in a proper way. And so I believe strongly that I can address those issues. I also feel that it's important that we have a strong two-party system in this state, and so I thought we owed it to the residents and the voters of District 8 that we at least have a second-party candidate, and so that we can make a choice for the people of District 8, that they have an opportunity to hear different viewpoints and have a chance to vote come November.
Okay, now you mentioned education. Of course, that's going to be our first question
Sure.
that we have for you today. K through 12 education continues to be an issue each year in the
Right.
state legislature. This year, no exception, with the passage of House Bill 1234, and then that subsequently being referred
Right.
now to the November ballot, and is now on there as referred law 16.
Right.
What are your thoughts? You kind of touched on a little bit there, but let's expand that a little bit. And your thoughts on the K through 12, the state of K through 12 education in the state?
Well, first of all, let's be clear that what our schools, districts, and administrators and teachers are doing with what resources they have today in terms of money and structures, they're doing an excellent job. They're turning out an excellent product. They've got students that are involved with their schools. And so I don't think that we're in dire straits in the sense that we're not educating our kids properly. We are doing so. But what we're doing is we're lacking in the sense of what we can give our children in terms of overwhelming good education. And we certainly have educators that are being underpaid. So I think that the proper way is improving the amount of money that goes to our student aid formula, SAF. You know, if we look at what we're doing today, we are spending less on our student aid formula here in 2012 than we are back going to 2007. And so there's no household, no business that could operate on less revenue today than they did 5 years ago and still make ends meet. And so we have to address that lack of critical funding for education. And, we have a 21st century education going on here, but we've got a 19th century tax system funding it. And we don't normally go around in horse and buggy, but yet it's the horse and buggy days that's determining how we fund education. And we need to get into more modern times and more modern ways of how we're going to fund education.
So what are your thoughts then on what the legislature passed this year, House Bill 1234, and then now that has been referred as well? I mean, what are your feelings on that issue?
Well, I've been strongly against that measure right from the get-go. It never came from the teachers themselves. It was never designed to be a pro-education bill. It was divisive toward teachers. There's things that we could have done a lot better in terms of what we could do for education. I made a challenge early on when this bill was in hearing and peer, that if there was any educator that would want to just contact me or tell me on the street that they supported 1234, I'd be willing to listen to them. It's been 6 months later, and I've yet to have an educator come up to me, either by email, phone call, or in person, saying that they support Measure 1234. So when you have a whole block of educators that don't feel as though it's the right way of running education, why are we pressing this issue? Why did the governor take it as far as he did? And I think it was a wrong approach and a wrong answer what he's doing. Tenure within 1234, abolishing tenure, I'm not in favor of that. I think that teachers and educators need to have their career and their working contract protected. On the other hand, there is measures today that if a teacher's not up to snuff, they can be dismissed properly and through the right channels. As far as merit pay, we're only going to award 20% of our educators. Well, is that telling me that the other 80% aren't worth the salt that they lick on? No, I think that all educators are worth being better compensated. And so by going in and only going to develop merit pay for just 20% of the educators is going to divide that educational community rather than having it work together. Most school districts and most teachers work as a team. They understand that every year, every group of students is different, and they try to improve the welfare of their students, not only in their classroom, but in the entire school itself.
Okay. Moving on to another area of some concern, especially this last legislative session that kind of came up, the controversy, some animosity amongst the parties, political parties, even within the parties themselves, a little bit of infighting, if you will. During this legislative session, what are your thoughts on that? And if you're elected, what would you do to try to kind of bring the focus back to what everybody should be there for, and that's working for the constituents?
Well, definitely. And I think we need to get beyond that. The only thing that can pass in peers is a Republican-sponsored bill or a governor-led bill. That any legislator, regardless if he's a Republican or Democrat, if he or she comes up with a good idea and a good approach, that it should have a proper hearing and a proper exposure to views and testimony. I'm also a believer in open caucus. There's no reason that any caucus, whether it's Republican or Democrat, has to go into closed session. Yet today, most Republican caucus sessions are closed not only to the public but to the media also. And that has to change. We don't need to have state government being decided upon behind closed doors, that it needs to be discussed in an open environment. We have governing bodies locally and statewide that have to adhere to open government laws, and they can't go into closed session unless it's for contract or personnel. So if a Republican or Democrat caucus wants to go into closed session, tell me what employee are they discussing that day that they need to be behind closed session. So I really think that we need to have the availability of caucuses being open to the public. If you've got a legislative strategy that you want to promote or enhance, it needs to have the light of day and not being discussed behind closed doors. So that's one approach. Mm-hmm. And frankly, if my Democrat caucus decides to go into closed session, I'll just sit in the hallway. I'm not going to participate in something like that. And as far as any party, I know that the Republican Party has had some strife within itself. I think that, again, it's important to be all-encompassing. I know that we all come from different advantages and viewpoints, but it's important that we respect every legislator that's out there, because in fact they are elected by the people within their district. And so it's not for other legislators to judge the merit of an individual as to whether or not he or she can be within caucus. I really think that we need to be all-encompassing, whether we're Republicans or Democrats. And I'd be more than willing to talk with any legislator, or even if they wanted a legislator such as myself, if I'm a Democrat, to come over and talk to a group of Republicans, I will be the first one to do that.
Okay. Moving on to kind of a local issue, but obviously needs some attention from the state, is drainage issues. I know, especially here in Lake County, they've struggled a little bit with some concerns with drainage issues within the county and how they should be handled, and maybe some things that the state needs to do. So what do you feel the state's role should be as far as local drainage issues are concerned?
Well, I think that they need to provide, some technical resources and help. But I think by and large it's still a local issue. And I think here in Lake County, by and large, I think the system is working. We don't have drainage haphazard here. We have rules and regulations that you have to follow within the local NRCS office. You also have to get a permit from the Lake County Courthouse. And if nothing else, that creates an atmosphere of conversation, negotiation, discussion amongst individual landowners. And again, if it doesn't be resolved on paper, that permit hearing can come before the full commission, and they are individuals that can hear the matter out and decide for the best. As far as drainage itself, done properly and with the due respect for the environment and for your neighbors, it can be done, I think, in a very efficient manner. I've done tiling and drainage myself on my farm. I see the benefits of what it does, not only to my operation, but I think to the environment that it helps out. And again, I think we just have to basically follow the golden rule, make sure you don't do anything onto your neighbor that you wouldn't like to have them do onto you. So.
Okay, and now as you've been, since you've joined the election and as you've been out campaigning and talking to people or maybe hearing from people within District 8, the 4-county area, what are some of the things people are most concerned with? What are some other issues maybe that we haven't touched on that maybe people are bringing up to you and want to see addressed in Pierre if you're elected? Well,
I think one is, being I come from a Democratic Party and we have a very small minority out in Pierre, I think people are wanting to see a more stronger balance between the two parties. And it's not because they're pro-Republican or pro-Democrat, but I think they see that legislation is done better in Pierre when you have both parties that are highly represented and highly involved. That way, any measure that has to go through the legislature, go through 2 committee hearings, 2 bodies of the legislature, if it has that bipartisan look and approach to it, I think it's a more stronger and viable type of legislation that can serve the people of South Dakota. So I hear that often, that they're encouraging me and other candidates, and I hope they're encouraging not only myself as a Democrat, but they're also encouraging Republicans to run in a primary or whatever it might be, that we have more people involved that want to serve and want to tackle the issues. And of course the main thing, and that's the reason I'm running, is the whole issue of education, giving support to our teachers. There's hardly an individual that you don't sit down and talk to or hear from or get a letter from that the number one issue is education. And if we don't solve and improve education, whatever else we do in this state matters little. I've always said that the biggest asset that we have in South Dakota is the land itself and the bright young minds that live upon it. And how we educate those young minds and how we steward the land will determine quite well how our future will be in this state.
Okay, Charlie, wrapping up, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make to the voters of District 8?
Well, I would just ask them to listen to the issues here in the next several weeks, to be involved, certainly take the opportunity and the responsibility to vote, know the issues. I intend to vote no on measures 14 and 16, and with some hesitation I'm going to support issue number 15, the sales tax issue. And so those are where I stand personally, but I think it's important, regardless of which candidate any of the voters support, that they also understand the entire ballot and some of the important issues that we have on there, and to take time to listen to it. Getting back to education, I'm just going to sum it up with these few words. It's better to enhance education by addition rather than by subtraction.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie Johnson, for being with us today. Charlie, of course, a candidate for the District 8 Senate race this year, and of course we want to remind everyone to be sure to get out and vote in the general election on November 6th, and if you can't make it there, to vote absentee or vote early at the local courthouse.
Thank you, Sue.